Suarez joins us, professor at American University and former chief of staff for the governor of the Bank of Mexico. Welcome to Biz Asia America. Good to see you. You know, Frank, it almost sounds frustrated in the report that we're not seeing better growth. It's been a disappointing year, a disappointing decade, quite frankly. What's the problem with Mexico, which is a country that has had so much high hopes?
Basically, that the major reforms that were supposed to be complementary to NAFTA, which was passed and became operational in 1994, were stalled. It is until now, with President Peña Nieto, in which the reforms have started moving. But that will take time. People are worried about reading the fine print and the ancillary laws that are being drafted for the many reforms that have been passed. So growth is not picking up as fast.
Is the North American NAFTA, you referenced,
Yes,
by the way, for our audience, the North American Free Trade Agreement,
yes,
is it a failure?
No, not in the least. It's a bright spot that we have in the Mexican economy.
But it's not. It's still not enough to drive the economy.
Because you needed other reforms to increase the competitiveness of Mexican labor force, and those reforms were stalled for close to 18 years.
The last decade, we have seen so much growth from China, Indonesia, Japan, around the world. You name the emerging market, and it's done fairly well.
Yes.
Mexico has been left behind. Is Mexico one of the losers in globalization?
No, no. What happened is that we were not riding the wave of raw materials. Mexico became an industrial power, and Mexico exports more industrial manufacturing goods.
But they were a main manufacturer, and they manufactured a lot of goods for the
Exactly.
US.
And that's when China came in and started eroding Mexico's competitiveness.
Because they were able to make products for cheaper.
Exactly. Now that's starting to change. But this current circumstance, the short term, also has been not helped by the government. We have a new government. The new guys don't know how to spend. So government spending is down, something like 5%.
Because they don't know how to spend, or they're not spending enough.
They are not spending enough because they don't know how to spend. It's very, very curious. You have a 6-year cycle.
What about these reforms in the energy sector? Breaking up Pemex, for example, trying to semi-privatize and do joint ventures and creating a little bit of privatization. I mean, do you like those moves by the government?
Absolutely, but they are going to take some time to implement. What we know now is the proposal that the president has made to change the constitution to allow for sharing of profits with the private sector. That's step number one. How is it going to be implemented? What are the bylaws that will go along with that? It's a long way off because there's a big fight to get the constitution amended. I mean, all the left in Mexico opposes that because they revere Pemex as it is, which is bad news because it's a company terribly inefficient.
In a situation where you have low growth, I mean, I guess normally most central banks would just lower interest rates to zero to try to stimulate growth and try to stimulate spending and credit growth. What should the Bank of Mexico do, in your opinion?
I think they should be very careful because we were riding a fairly high rate of inflation. The target rate of inflation of the central bank is between 2% and 3%, and it went all the way to 4.5%. Now it's down to 3.5%. So they have to be very careful how they manage monetary policy.
You don't want zero growth, low rates, and relatively high inflation.
No, but in the second semester, you're going to see kicking in fiscal policy. The government will start spending. They have announced plans to undertake infrastructure and other basic investments. And hopefully the private sector will start getting their bearings. There's another element. There was a major change in housing policy. The previous governments were sponsoring and subsidizing housing far away from the cities.
But very quickly, I want to ask you about manufacturing. And there's a lot of talk of moving manufacturing back here to North America, Mexico potentially being one of the areas that you could see new factories.
Yes.
Foreign investment, is that a big focus?
It is, and it should be increasingly so, because the idea is precisely that we have to, together with Canada and the U.S., take advantage of our synergies and produce in the most efficient way.
All right. Professor Suarez, American University, always good to have you on. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.